Retirement can leave you with lots of time on your hands. So what do you do to fill those hours? Find a hobby. Tonight you'll meet 4 people who love their hobbies and 1 man who turned his hobby into a business. Funding for the Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. The dictionary defines hobby as an activity done regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure. Retirement gives us freedom from work, but not working can lead to boredom. That's why 73% of baby boomers responding to a survey said they expect to have a hobby or a special interest to occupy their time when they retire. You're about to meet 4 people who know the value and rewards of the hobbies that they enjoy. Maybe it's time for you to get a hobby. On any given day, you might run into Michael Packus at the Memphis Zoo. This retired IT professional goes on regular photo safaris to the zoo. Oddly enough, it was his wife and his brother that convinced Michael to take up photography as a retirement hobby.
What got me into it was really my wife, Terry. As I was about to retire, she said, "You're going to have to find something to do." And she suggested doing something creative. And I never thought of myself as a creative person. My brother visited from out of town, and he came with a digital camera and wanted to go to the zoo and take some photos. And after he left, he sent me the photos, and I said, you know, I think I could do that, because it combined a creative aspect and a technical aspect. As I started taking more and more photos, I started to realize I did have an eye for it.
Michael has been pursuing his hobby for about 7 years now. The animals at the Memphis Zoo have become almost the entire focus of his camera's lens.
The main reason is that I love the animals, and I love the earth and the ecosystems that they belong to, and think they should be preserved, and thought that my photos might encourage people to think about conservation and think about the ecosystems the animals live in.
The images that Michael has produced show the creativity and visual eye for composition that belies his 40-year technical career in IT. He regards his pictures as animal portraits.
And I wanted to show the animal stories, and it slowly developed showing animals as portraits. I started doing it as if I was doing human portraits and trying to get people to relate to an animal as a fellow creature on this earth. I always walk around looking for opportunities, and there's always opportunities with certain animal behavior. Even an animal that you've taken a picture of many times will show you a different side of their personality.
Like any good photographer, Michael has one photo that he considers his best work, a dynamic picture of an eagle.
And this eagle just jumped down from its tree, walked over to a water pool, stuck its head in the water pool, and started shaking that water off. I did take a lot of pictures, over 100, and I got one where his head was sharp but the water was flying off. I knew it was a moment, but I was hoping the technicals would come together.
Michael's hobby has connected him with a creative side that he didn't know he had. And it has introduced him to fellow photographers at the Memphis Camera Club, where the social interaction with other members underscores the importance of having a hobby.
I think a hobby is real important, because I think even more than doing the hobby, whatever your passion is the connection you can get with other people of similar interest. So when you leave work, you leave a lot of people behind, and you kind of wonder, well, what am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to every day? And I think getting a hobby, especially with an interest group, will take the place of a lot of those people that you left behind when you retired. I love it when people have an emotional reaction to my photographs, and that's probably been the most fulfilling thing.
Like Michael Packus, Julie Morgan enjoys photography. But instead of focusing her camera on animals at the zoo, she takes pictures of plants in her garden. And for good reason. Julie has become a master gardener in her retirement.
I became a master gardener in 2004. I had tried to find something that was going to give back to the community.
Her way of giving back to the community was to rehabilitate Oak Lawn Gardens in Germantown, a botanic garden, park, and museum filled with daffodils, azaleas, and native flowers. Although gardening has become Julie's retirement passion, she wasn't much of a gardener growing up in her native Wisconsin.
I was asked to garden since I was a little child, and with, then you just pick the goodies. When I was older, I had developed asthma, and I had allergy issues. And so I didn't really want to be anywhere near a garden.
Moving to the South changed her mind about gardening. One look at her backyard, and you can see the extent of her expertise and knowledge as a master gardener.
If I think about it long enough, I prefer shade gardening because we have hot summers here. And that'll definitely intrigue you as to how you can keep that plant alive. I call myself a plant collector. I mean, we've been taught all the design angles and everything else, but I prefer having a large number of different plants because I kind of incorporated one of my other hobbies, which is photography. And I take pictures of the plants. And I use them because one of the other things I do for Master Gardeners is their website.
Julie likes unusual plants, ones that you may not find in great quantity here in the Mid-South. And she displays the names of many of her plants on markers alongside them, so she can identify any of the 400 plants she has in her garden. Aside from appreciating the visual beauty of having a shade garden in her backyard, Julie enjoys the physical aspect of gardening.
I'm one of those gardeners who'd rather get dirty. So if you caught me gardening, I'd have jeans on because I'm going to get down on the ground, and I am going to get dirty because it's a very peaceful. It gives back as much as I give to it. When I started this, I got over a fairly serious health issue, and I didn't have to work a job, so I decided it was time to give back to my community. There is nothing more peaceful than coming to a quiet garden. You're doing a lot of work, but you're giving back. I love it.
Julie has good advice for anyone looking for a hobby to fill their time.
Look to the hobbies that you think you're most interested in, but don't overlook those that you've never tried. Give it a shot. Have fun with it.
Carla Norman is at the regular monthly meeting of the Memphis Stamp Collectors Society. For 40 years, she toyed with the idea of collecting stamps as a hobby, but she didn't take the plunge until a visit to the Agri-Center to get her knives sharpened.
And I saw a sign for MEMFEX, which is the Memphis Stamp Collectors Society show. And I thought, well, you know, you've been talking yourself out of this for an awfully long time, and you're not going to get any more time than you've already had saying you're not going to do this. So why don't you look into this? And I came to the next meeting, and it wasn't very long after I started fiddling with stamps that I thought, there's got to be some payoff in here with the kids.
The kids that Carla is referring to attend Rivercrest Elementary School, where Carla serves as librarian. She has taken her hobby and turned it into a classroom learning tool, teaching the students about history, geography, and culture through stamps.
The interest for me is all about the story. I mean, look at where we are. You know, there's a story with every stamp. Who's that person on the stamp? You know, what are they doing? They don't just put Mr. John Q. Public on a stamp. They've done something extraordinary to be on a stamp. And my 5th grade students selected stamps to decorate a bookmark, and then they had to find out information about those countries. That's a lot more fun than just handing them an atlas or an almanac and say, okay, answer these questions. You know, they've chosen stamps that resonate with them for some reason, and it could be as easy as, I like the picture on it.
Worldwide, it's estimated that about 60 million people collect stamps. At meetings of the Memphis Stamp Collectors Society, members sell, auction, and trade stamps. But these days, most buying and selling takes place on the internet. Not long ago, this 1-cent stamp from British Guiana sold at auction for $9.5 million. Carla operates on a slightly lower budget.
So I'm a very modest collector right now. I have chosen to collect Ireland because that's probably a country that I have a reasonable expectation of making a decent collection since they became independent in 1922.
I asked Carla why she was so fascinated with stamps. After all, they're just small pieces of paper.
Well, but there's a lot of information on those little tiny pieces of paper. Names of people I don't know, dates, places that I don't know, from countries I don't know, from languages I don't know. So you have to do research, which again is kind of what my profession is about.
For Carla, a hobby is more than just something to do to fill the hours in the day. The reward is unlocking the stories behind every stamp.
I'm a reader, but I want interesting things to read about. And I want something that's going to be stimulating, that's going to continue to let me learn. And this is a good way to continue stimulating those gray cells. It's a wonderful hobby. I'm thrilled, and I could kick myself that it's taken me this long, but oh well, you know.
And the jazz you were loving just before this break was Louis Armstrong from the CD, Louis Armstrong Plays W.C. Handy. Now there's a Memphis guy. And that was Beale Street Blues, and there's another Memphis connection.
Keith Schaap is a retired English teacher and writer for the Chicago Board of Trade. So how did he end up as a volunteer DJ at the University of Memphis radio station?
I've always liked jazz. I used to play it. What fascinates me, there was a featured CD probably in November, early December, involving a young clarinetist. And it reminded me very much of some of the stuff I heard from the old Benny Goodman sextet with clarinet and guitar doing things together. And so I've started doing things with an old guy and a new guy. And there's an amazing amount of new material coming out that's really good.
The creativity that Keith finds in his jazz hobby is matched by the joy he finds in his other hobby, woodworking. It's a childhood hobby that has resurfaced in his retirement years.
I started buying tools when I was in about 4th grade, and I had a little workbench in the basement and did stuff. And then we had shop class and we did that. And so I've always fooled around with it.
For the past 5 years, Keith, with creative advice from his wife Julie, has been making shadow boxes based on literary works of all kinds: poems, songs, biblical passages, even children's nursery rhymes.
She had seen some work by another artist who did very primitive wood sculptures and a lot of other things. And I said, I'm going to make a shadow box, and it's going to be based on a famous poem. And I'll have a little scene that will depict sort of the essence of that poem. And this is based on the nursery rhyme, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? I made this little cradle that will be in the box, and then I made a little figure, which is the baby in the cradle, and when I was cutting it out of wood, I broke the arm off. And I was kind of in despair, and Julie said, well, a mistake is an opportunity. And so just put the baby in the cradle and paint a blanket over it. I had done that on a different box, not because I broke the arm, but just because I did. And so that salvaged that, and all of these things, huge numbers of them, have that kind of collaboration going on. And so in terms of relationship with your wife, this is a great hobby.
The creativity that Keith finds in his hobbies underlines the importance of having a retirement pastime. For him, it's a way to keep his juices flowing.
We have a friend who's an avid golfer, and he's been retired for a while, and he has 100 famous golf courses that he wants to play. Well, okay, so that's a drive. That keeps him going. If you don't have things that get your juices going, retired people that don't have that seem to decay very fast.
Keith has some good advice for anyone looking for a hobby.
You got to do something, and it better be something that you're really passionate about, because the only reward really is doing it.
Hobbies can be vitally important as we age, simply because it gives us pleasurable ways to fill our retirement hours. But sometimes a hobby can become a business. That's exactly what happened with Murray Hudson. What began as a childhood fascination with maps has transformed him into one of the premier collectors and dealers of antique maps and globes in the world. Murray Hudson is the Map Man. You can find Halls, Tennessee on the map just south of Dyersburg. It's a small town of about 2,500 people. But that man walking down the sidewalk is known worldwide. Murray Hudson is the Map Man and runs a storefront and 2 other buildings filled with antique maps and globes. His fascination with maps began when he was 4 or 5 years old.
I've always loved the idea of travel and finding out things about something other than the little place where I was. And my father had been in England and in Germany and so on during the war, and so his stories really, I really connected with them. As I was growing up and we were traveling, I always kept the highway maps. I was the person supposedly directing where we're going, but it was usually pretty simple.
So you could sort of travel vicariously through all of these maps?
Yes, definitely.
Murray has done a lot of traveling in his life, and he's had a lot of careers. He was a college professor in Alabama, spent a year studying at Oxford in England. He's been a stockbroker in Arizona, started a manufacturing business before returning to Tennessee to become a farmer. All the while he was collecting maps, with no intention of turning his hobby into a business. Then, one day, he checked on the market value of a rare map of Texas.
But I got a catalog from someone in Texas, and the Texas map that I had increased, I don't know, like maybe 50 times what I paid for it. And I said, this sure beats the stock market.
That realization of the value of his rare maps and globes led Murray to let his sons take over the farm while he opened his shop in downtown Halls. Today, his inventory spans 3 buildings with nearly 20,000 maps, 7,000 books, mostly atlases, and over 750 globes.
I think as far as what we have online, I don't know of anybody that has more anywhere.
Murray has built an international business from tiny Halls, Tennessee, through his personal connection with collectors worldwide and the World Wide Web. The internet has turned Murray's business into a global empire.
A huge portion of it is. I get orders from dealers, and museums, and so. Library of Congress is one of my biggest customers.
Like any collector, Murray has a few favorites.
One of the first maps that I bought was a little map of, and I have it framed at home, of Ireland. What I noticed, because I like to look at the maps and I love place names. And up in the northern part of Ireland, there was what looked like a cave in a mountain. It was called Purgatorio. I said, oh, so that's where the troubles are. One of my favorite and one of the best looking and the biggest map that I currently have. This is during the Revolutionary War. It's 1777. It is the French version, and of course the French were fighting on our side, of a British wall map. But that was the treaty map, and that was our border, first border. The map behind you over there has California as an island. Before we dammed up the Colorado River, it had massive floods every season. And if you came up the Sea of Cortez and you saw what was really the Colorado River overflowing, you think, well, that's just a continuation of it. I have an old map behind you over here has a proposed state of Shoshone instead of Idaho. The same map has Corona for Colorado. And it is a major production. That was actually suggested names for state. There was a state of Lincoln proposed, I think, for North Dakota. This pair of globes are from 1776. I think I have a globe older than that, but the older ones sell pretty readily and so on. And this is the only matched pair of globes that are dated that I've ever run in stands, carved stands. I have the first state map of Tennessee, and it was Tennessee government the year before, and they erased government, and in that large space they put state. And so it looks a little bit out of proportion in the title, but it's a very handsome map done by Daniel Smith. And I did a talk earlier this year at the State Library about the borders of Tennessee and how they came to be where they are, and they're not really exactly where they're supposed to be. And 12 miles, I think it's 18 miles too far north when it gets to the Tennessee River. And that was because of compass variation caused by the fact there was an awful lot of iron ore near the surface. They mined iron ore.
In case you're wondering about the dollar value of Murray's collectibles, here's a first edition of the first atlas printed in America. In 1795, it had a sale price of $5, or about $100 in today's money. But if you'd like to buy this rare copy, Murray will sell it to you for $37,500. If your budget is a tad lower, there are plenty of maps, globes, and books in stock at much more reasonable prices. But Murray doesn't collect just for the money. As with any true collector, it's all about the next big find.
The fun of the hunt is still there. You know, I like to travel, and I like to seek out things, and it doesn't always end up, you know, being anything great, but just doing it is worth the effort.
Before we left Murray's shop, I had to ask him if he had any treasure maps. Apparently, a lot of people ask him that question, and he has a pirate's response.
Now look, if it were you and you had a treasure map, and someone wanted to buy it, would you not have made a copy? And as soon as you handed it to them, go out and rent a backhoe and beat them to it. The map is the treasure.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.